Welcome back to another episode of Keep It Fictional. Today we are going to continue our most anticipated reads for this season. So last week we have talked about a bunch of books that we're excited to read, and this week we're going to tell you more of them. But first, I would love to know from my book friends. It's we're recording on April 12th, so there's been like 4 months and a bit. What book has been your favorite so far? What is the book that you have read that so far? And it doesn't have to be a book that is published this year. It could be a book that is published any year. So what is your favorite book so far? And I'm quickly checking all your Goodreads, your spreadsheets.
I think mine is actually torn. So I have two that I really enjoyed. One I read right at the very beginning of the year, and I'm not going to say too much about it because it might come back in one of our later episodes. And this is The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. This one was on one of my most anticipated from, I'm not going to remember when it came out, sometime last year. And so it will be coming back up. But it's a fantasy kind of set in sort of an alternate world in a library, and it's very involved. It's very much more than I expected it to be, and I loved it. I listened to the audiobook of it, and I was really, really drawn in the whole time. And the sequel is coming out, and then maybe even out right now. It may have just come out, so I'm excited to read that. And then the other one was actually the one that I read for Emma's Obsession episode, and that was Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan, and another fantasy based on Chinese mythology, and another one where I am definitely going to read the second one. It's a duology, and I'm going to, whenever I have time, I'm going to read the second one of that. So yeah, those ones I think would be my two picks for this year so far.
I'm gonna, if we're cheating, then I'm gonna cheat too. Denison Avenue for CBC Canada Reads. I'm still very bitter that it didn't win, and I have thoughts. And then the other one that I really enjoyed, but I'm not allowed to talk about on the podcast about art anymore, was Provenance: How a Conman and a Forger Rewrote the History of Modern Art by Lainey Salisbury and Ali Sujo, which talks about the history of John Drew, who was kind of like the front man, the con man who sold all these paintings, and then his forger, John Myatt. And it is a wild story. If you enjoy true crime, if you, like me, love art crime, it is an amazing story. And it seems so unbelievable as you're reading it. You're like, surely not. Surely at some point, no one's going to. Okay, they're just going to keep going for years and years and years. It's a really well placed, well written true crime book that reads like a thriller, and I thought it was really exceptional. And it's a story that I knew about, and then just loved all the little details that the authors brought to it.
It's only fair for every mention of Calvino, for every mention of Yona of the Dawn, you allow one art book, I think. Right? Like, it's only fair. So
I'm gonna start keeping track of that. I'm gonna
should.
Yeah.
I'll try to stop talking about Yona. I just can't. It's so good. Obviously, like, I love reading kids graphic novels, so there's been quite a few kids comics that I've read this year that I've really loved. All of which happen to be by Kay O'Neill, because I really enjoyed the Tea Dragon Society, and I really loved The Moth Keeper, another really kind of cute, cozy graphic novel. But my favorite book that I've read this year thus far, it's similar to Corene, did not win the Canada Reads debate, but did win the Canada Reads of my heart, was Bad Cree. I just loved it. I ate it up. I loved it so much. I'm also really enjoying the book that I'm reading for next week's Keep It Fictional. So if you ask me this question next week, my answer might be different, but I don't want to spoil what that is yet. So I'm going to go with Bad Cree.
Exciting. I looked at my spreadsheet, and it's got quite a few 4.5 stars. Yes, because the half stars exist in my spreadsheet also, just in case you haven't rolled your eyes enough, Corene, today. But the 5-star book, there are 3 of them. I cannot count Lispector because every Lispector book is a 5-star book. So I'm not going to count Lispector book, but I think I'm going to probably pick, and one of them, same thing. One of them is coming up on an episode, so I'm going to save that one. The other one is going to be probably the one that I already talked about on the show, You Bleeding Childhood by Michele Mardi, translated by Brian Robert Moore. I just love that book so much. It's always nice to discover new authors that you haven't read and you're like, they are so good. And I felt like there was just a breath of fresh air when I read it, very much like when I read Calvino books. So, just gives me so much joy, and I just have to, you mark it down just for you. And I'm just still thinking about all those short stories. I just love them. So I think that would be my pick for now, like my favorite book of so far. So, well, thank you everyone for sharing that. We are going to talk about books that it may become our favorite book for the year. So shall we start with Emma? Let's start with Emma today.
I can go first. So this next book was highly, highly recommended to me by a close friend of mine who loved the author's first book that came out, I think in 2021 or 2022. So I'm really excited to check out her second one that comes out this upcoming summer. It comes out in June. This book is actually by another local author. We joked that I'm the only one representing Canadian authors today, and apparently that's true. So this one is written by a teacher and a librarian who's currently living in Vancouver. And I actually know this author because we were at UBC in library school together. I did not know she was an author at the time until my friend told me. But alas, very exciting. This is an author who's currently getting an MLIS at UBC. So this book is called Cicada Summer, and it's the second novel by author Erica McKeen. Penguin Random House's website describes it as an incantatory and atmospheric. Cicada Summer is a dazzlingly original novel about how we grieve and care for one another. Taking place in a lakeside cabin in remote Ontario, Husha and her ailing grandfather Arthur are quarantining in the summer of 2020, with a heat wave bearing down and the songs of periodical cicadas surrounding them. In addition to coping with the global pandemic, they are also mourning the recent death of Husha's mother. They're soon joined by Husha's ex-lover Nellie, who arrives at the cabin without explanation and completes their trio. Also among them in the wilderness is a strange book that Husha discovers while cleaning out her mother's home. When the three read the book, they discover that Husha's mother's last missive was a short story collection, crawling with unsettling imagery and terrifying transformations. And with the cicadas surrounding them, I can just feel the creepiness permeating through it. As the stories from the collection start to bleed into their claustrophobic life within this cabin, Husha and Arthur and Nellie must reckon with loss, with grief, and longing, and what it really means to know one another. I'm personally not too keen on bugs, so I'm wondering how much the cicadas really are going to play a part in the plot of the story, because bugs kind of freak me out. But I do love things that are kind of spooky, a little bit like Virginia said before, spooky, surreal, absurd. I love things like that. So I'm not usually creeped out by horror imagery. It's just I don't know how the bugs are going to go. So we'll see. We'll see how that plays out for me. So long as they're not spiders, I should be okay. But I do typically really enjoy books that are about grief and about family. And I like things that are a little unsettling. So I think I could handle the cicadas, kind of depending on how creepy crawly they are. So McKeen's first book, I don't know if it's called Tear or Tear, but it's Tear, is another surreal and claustrophobic story about womanhood and isolation, and is filled with its own full bit of unsettling imagery. So I feel like this book will be kind of similar in theme. If you've read her first book and you really enjoyed that, like my friend did, then you might want to check this one out. Or if you like books that are kind of surreal and unnerving, books that are eerie and ethereal, and you like contemporary novels that are about grief and womanhood and family experiences, all kind of topics that I'm drawn to in my reading, then you should check out Cicada Summer by Erica McKeen, which comes out this upcoming June. And I think we will pass it over to Corene to hear what Corene has to say next. And I'm fine if it's an art book. You could totally talk about art.
I am going to mention my other special interest, which is the Tear Tear kind of like play on words is also used by BTS in their seminal song by the rap line. But anyways, if you're doing the drinking game at home, you can absolutely take a drink after that one. All right. So in 2018, a new app appeared on the market promising safe and secure communication. It was called Anom. Sorry. I'm going to giggle a lot during this one because it's really quite bananas to get through. So here we go. So yes, just an app. It appears anon. No one knows where it comes from, but it promises safe and secure kind of like communication. So who needs safe and secure communication? People who do business in the shadows. People who don't want their communications being looked at by, let's say the authorities. And so this app became popular with money launderers, hitmen, people selling drugs, people shipping drugs, people planning murders, people talking about murders, people enacting that murders. Because of course you don't want to do that in like a cute little WhatsApp group. You need something that you know is encrypted, you know something that cannot be hacked by an outside source. You need to make sure that this communication that you're doing all of your red work in is exclusive to the people who need to get it. And so all of this business was done on this app. It's not traceable, it's secure, but there's only one problem with this app. All of these people, all of these criminals using it, love it, except for the one feature that they don't know about. And that is that the app was secretly run by the FBI. I wish I was joking. So yeah, within this app that all of these criminals were using because it promised safe and secure communication, there was a backdoor in it that American, Australian, and European authorities could just swoop in on and use as necessary. Yep. So this, I don't even know what to call this. It like debacle, but it also worked as was planned and also was probably helpful, but then things start going wrong because of course it would. Like this is absolutely bananas. Is called it's all kind of chronicled in a new book coming out by Joseph Cox called Dark Wire: The Incredible True Story of the Largest Sting Operation Ever. I believe it has already been optioned by Netflix to be turned into a series starring, I believe, Jason Bateman, because it really is, it is really like honestly it sounds so outlandish. But as with my other true crime book, I think it's kind of digging into that idea that we give so much of ourselves and so much of our trust to online platforms, to people that we meet online, that we have so much unearned trust and that it takes so little to exploit that trust for whatever nefarious means you might have, whether that is kind of making someone fall in love with you or tracking all of your criminal enterprises and then giving you over to the authorities. So for me, maybe I know Virginia, sometimes we come up with like themes in our reading. Maybe my themes is the danger of the internet, which again, I cannot believe that not one of them was like, hey, I wonder who's running this. Don't we all believe that there's a little FBI man in our phone listening to everything that we do and say? Hello, Kif FBI man who's listening to everything that we say. I hope that you found this podcast enjoyable. Yeah, so I'm definitely going to read this, but I think I'm going to spend most of it giggling. Yeah, so, Dark Wire, look for it on Netflix or at a bookstore near you. I'm going to pass this over to Sadie.
All right, I have another one for the Kif drinking game, and also I feel like another one for you, Corene. Every time you hear me mention Kelley Armstrong, you probably get an art book. So Kelley Armstrong has written fantasy. She's written urban fantasy. She's written more traditional fantasy. She has written mystery. She has written thriller. She has written horror. She has written YA. She has written kids lit. But she has not yet written romance until now. So I am hesitantly excited about Kelley Armstrong's upcoming contemporary romance, Finding Mr. Right. I honestly don't know. Oh, she's written historical fiction. Not my favorite. So yes. So I am going to give her the benefit of the doubt because I do legitimately enjoy her. I would say that she is one of my favorite authors. I have read pretty much everything that she has written. And so I will, of course, read this and I enjoy romance. So we will see kind of how it plays out. And the concept is also a little bit hilarious. So the story revolves around Daphne McFadden. Now, Daphne is an author, and she knows very well that as a female author, she does not exactly have all of the benefits of a male author in the same career. And so to kind of get beyond that, she decides that she's going to submit her next book under a male pseudonym to see if maybe it will make any difference. She's been turned down over and over and over again. But as soon as she submits her book as Zane Remington, it's picked up immediately, which is great. She's finally getting her book published. However, now she has to figure out how she's going to promote her book as Zane Remington when she is very clearly not Zane Remington. So the most logical explanation is to hire an actor to pretend to play Zane Remington. And so she finds Chris Stanton. Now, Chris Stanton is kind of an actor. He's mainly an accountant, but he dabbles in acting on the side. And he is not exactly the kind of character that Zane Remington is. Zane Remington is a manly man. Zane Remington lives in the woods and chops firewood on a daily basis and knows how to paddle a canoe. And, well, Chris is more at home balancing books than living in the wilderness. However, he is willing to take on this role. And so he goes with Daphne to her gorgeous remote home in the Yukon, and they go to pretend that he is Zane Remington and kind of plan out how they're going to do this. However, the media starts to descend on them, and Chris has to figure out exactly how he's going to pretend to be this person that he is not in any possible way. And so it kind of explains this book that they're trying to figure this out, all while hilariously balancing the terrifying dangers of the wilderness, a massive femme fandom, and a serious crush on Daphne. So this book is very lighthearted, very fun, a little bit ridiculous. It kind of follows the fourth proximity trope, and yeah. So I'm excited to read it. Like I said, I do enjoy Kelley Armstrong, so I will give this one a shot, and I'm excited to kind of see how her foray into more traditional and contemporary romance is. So that again is Finding Mr. Right by Kelley Armstrong. Comes out June 25th. All right, Virginia, what is your next pick for us?
Well, I don't know if this is going to be like one of my favorite books, but it's definitely going to be the longest book that I'm going to read in this year. And because this is clocking at more than 1,000 pages. I know, right? What was I doing? And this is published by And Other Stories, which I talk about in a small press month episode. Coming out in July, we've got Funeral Rites by Kynpham Sing Nongkynrih. And this is not a book in translation. He did write this in English, but he is an author from India. And given the framing of the story, I think it makes total sense that it has to be this long. This is the story of the Khasi people. They are an ethnic group in Meghalaya, in northeastern India, in Assam, and also in Bangladesh. And in an author interview, he said that he wanted to write about us Khasis as a people. I feel a sense of frustration, of helplessness, of uselessness when strangers come here and say whatever they like about us and get away with it. So he decided to tell you the story of my people to clear their wounded name. So Funeral Nights, it's a story of a group of friends, a group of academics that decide to go to a remote part of the West Khasi Hills to watch this 6-day long funeral ceremony, which is going to end with a cremation of an elder who has been preserved in a treehouse for like 9 months. And it's going to end with a feast of the dead. But this group got there a little too early, almost a week before the event happened. So now they're stuck in the jungle. And with nothing much to do, they started telling stories and sharing stories around the fire. So kind of they said model sort of similar to like the Arabian Nights kind of story. We get all these anecdotes and stories and songs and poetries and parables and fairy tales and every kind of story that you can think of about their journey into the jungle, about death rituals. They said about admirable men and women, raconteurs and pranksters, lovers and fools, politicians and con men, drunks and taxi drivers, and just anything that you can think of about the Khasi people. I had a preview of the book, and it was just, even though I know there's going to be like 1,000 some more pages, but it